honoring our heroes on this special day, Veterans Day. Several veterans will share their stories and how they fought for freedom and peace on strange and foreign shores.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honoring Our Heroes, a Veterans Day special. I am Lou Seipel.
And I'm Jackie Schmelin, and we're here inside the Gold Star Museum, a very appropriate place to honor our veterans, but also talk about some amazing local stories.
Yeah, we're going to take you through a journey of some of our major wars in the United States and the Iowa ties that they have.
Yeah, our Iowa veterans. And we're going to introduce you to an incredible lady who's helping us today to tell those stories. So we want to welcome with us here at the Gold Star Museum, Sarah Maniscalco Robinson of the Iowa Veterans Perspective. So hello, Sarah. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
All right, so tell us about the Iowa Veterans Perspective. This is something you created, being a veteran yourself. So thank you, first of all, for your service.
Thank you.
How did this come to be?
Well, it really, as I have found out, is a calling that I've had throughout my entire life. I grew up the child of a veteran, and I joined the military when I was 18 years old. I never thought of anything else I'd rather do. And throughout my career, I started hearing more and more stories of our local veterans, and I thought, we really need to share these stories with the general population. Only 1% of our population serves in the military, so there's a vast number of people that don't know what it is to be a veteran.
And you're also sharing stories of people from many years past who it's important to hear those stories before they go away, correct?
That is so true, Jackie. I mean, we're losing our World War II veterans at alarming rates because they're now in their 90s, and the Korean War veterans are in their 80s. And if they pass away without sharing their stories, it's gone forever through time.
Some stories that may never be heard.
Exactly.
If you didn't document them, and that's what you do, is you document those stories.
Yes, and that's why it is so important to video record them, because it's not only them getting an opportunity to tell their story, but it's sharing them with that younger generation so they can learn what it was really like during that time.
And sharing their stories in their own words, from their own perspective, which is very unique.
You can learn more from sitting down with a veteran for an hour than you ever could in a book.
As someone who has served, what have you learned by interviewing these veterans?
I have learned that every job in the military is important. I so often hear, oh, you don't want to hear my story, my job was boring. And I always tell every veteran that your job was important. You helped in one way or another, regardless of what your job is. So that's what I've learned, is the military and our veterans are all one part of a big puzzle.
Now, as you've started Iowa Veterans Perspective, a lot of people have come out saying, we want to tell our story. Yes. What does that look like right now? How can we see these stories, and how can people get involved and participate?
Perfect question. There are a lot of people who want to be interviewed, and the community support has been absolutely amazing. But if you want to see one of my interviews, you can go to my YouTube channel, the Veterans Perspective channel, and watch any number of interviews. I also have a Facebook page and any sort of social media where you can follow along, because it really is a community project.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of these stories are getting very detailed. How do you choose what is going to be in that story? Because I'm sure the stories by themselves are fascinating.
Exactly, yes. I love the entire full hour interviews, but in order to put it on social media, you need to have that 2 to 3 minute sample, just a sample of what this person is. And if you like what that person's story is and you want to learn more, then you head on over to the Veterans Perspective YouTube channel and you can watch the full hour. And it's so hard for me to choose what's important, what's not important, but I use my best judgment and tell the story the best way that I can.
You can also see those stories here at the Gold Star Museum, but we want to have a further look at what the Iowa Veterans Perspective looks like right now.
I'm Sarah Maniscalco Robinson, and this is the Veterans Perspective.
Hey, Sergeant Major, how are you?
Hey.
I share the stories of our veterans and educate people on what it truly means to serve our country.
World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And turn around and look, and there's old mushroom cloud was going.
As a veteran myself, I want to do my part to preserve our nation's history through the words of our veterans.
Korea has been called the Forgotten War because it took place between World War II and Vietnam.
We bridge the generation gap and teach young people what it truly means to be a veteran.
So this one is you?
Yeah, and that was taken in the summer of 51.
So I set out on a mission to tell their stories.
We were in a firefight one night and we sat down and talked about it years later. Every one of us had a different take on the firefight. There's always good stories and then there's some rough ones, you know.
I want to share with you the unique challenges and triumphs of the men and women who chose to serve our country and continue to be a part of our communities.
ValorFit is a nonprofit that pairs veterans together inside of local gyms as a support system. So it's similar to a battle buddy system like in the military.
If you're gonna do something, you gotta do it right.
That's exactly it.
And I will continue to do so as long as there are brave men and women in our communities who would like to share the veterans' perspective.
And that's just a small glimpse into the amazing people that I get to meet as I travel Iowa and get these stories.
You are going to meet an amazing veteran when we come back, one that escaped from a prisoner of war camp.
You're watching Honoring Our Heroes, a very special Veterans Day here on CWI 23 and Local 5. We'll be back.
Our first story is about Glenn McDole, World War II veteran, United States Marine Corps, from right here in Des Moines. Glenn was captured by the Japanese in the Philippines and spent 3 years as a prisoner of war. Now, the stories of his abuse while he was a prisoner, those are well documented. But the story of his escape, it's hard to imagine.
I was a prisoner of war until December 14th, 1944. I'll never forget. Smitty and I was sitting down there looking out over the bay, and here you see him coming skimming across the top of the water. Big 4-engine plane came up to prison camp, hedge hop over the top of us, and he was going across. He was giving us the old wing flap, and we could see those stars on there. When he left, he went out and moved that airstrip, boom, 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 right down through the center. Then they sounded air raid again. Says, get in your trench, get in your trench, the Americans are coming, Americans are coming. And so the trench I was in was right along the edge of the cliff. And so I told the 20 guys in there with me, I said, let's knock a hole through the side, because if a bomb hits, it's going to cave it in on us. This way we'll have an escape hatch. A bunch of Japanese came down through the prison camp, carrying nothing but buckets and torches. And they came up to the first trench, a couple of buckets of gas and torches in on them. Here this Dr. Mango, God bless that guy. He came out they had little foxholes they were in, the officers. And this Mango came out of with his hands in the air, pleading, perfect Japanese language, telling them, why don't we talk? And the only thing they did was machine gun him and then threw a bucket of gas on him. So I told Smitty, Smitty, my God, they're killing everybody. Smith said, oh, you're joking. I said, no, take a look. And when he looked up there, and they could see some of these guys running human torches, this old big Texan, he said, all right, y'all, let's get out of here. And we started down the beach, and the machine gunners opened up on us. And I got flacked in the leg, and so I had to cripple back towards the prison camp. Now you imagine 3 years of garbage going over this pit. So I got close to the bank and buried right back up in underneath that garbage. And that's where I spent the rest of the afternoon, in that garbage pile. It wasn't long. I could feel them, hear them walk across that garbage. One of them got close to the bank, and I was just staring out that hole, and I was staring him right straight in the eyes. I didn't move, I just closed my eyes. Of course, I was covered with mud and junk. And about that time, a shot rang out, and away they went. The only way out of here, we're gonna have to swim this big channel. And I started swimming. 5 miles around that point to get to the other side. Of course, when I hit the other side, I passed out.
139 prisoners died on that day. 11 escaped with their lives. And those 11 were actually helped by local Filipinos. Now, if you'd like to see the entire story in its entirety, Veterans Perspective on YouTube or weareiowa.com. Now, Jackie has another amazing story about an Iowa veteran.
There were many jobs during World War II, from rationing coffee to tin to working in the munition plant. Our next veteran had the amazing opportunity of protecting one of our most valuable assets, the B-17 bomber. Meet Jack Frost.
My job was the waist gunner, taking care of the middle of the plane. If you were going on a mission, the first thing we would do, they'd get us up about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, fellas, roll out. We have a mission this morning.
After you dressed, you would keep to the mess hall and eat there. Then you'd get in the truck and you'd go to your headquarters, and then they would give you the breakdown.
Target for the day is ankle.
And then you'd eat breakfast again. Then you'd go out and get on the plane, and you'd fly for 12 to 14 hours. Well, our formation would be 36 planes. We would not only have our group, but there'd be other groups, could be anywhere from 200 to 1,000 planes up there. You couldn't see them all because they'd just be scattered out. They'd be scattered for 5 miles. In addition to the regular flight gear, we also had electric suits that we wore, even long underwear. It would keep us warm. We also wore our wool dress clothes. You weren't sitting, you were looking all the time. We were looking all around on both sides of the plane. We was looking at anything that was German, but vigilant all the time.
Just knocked down another one. Stretch 1 ME-109.
The P-51s with the red tails come out, and they'd come along beside us, and then they would do a wing waver at us, you know, and then we wave back at them. All the gunners were automatically buck sergeants. And the reason of that being is that if it went down or you bailed out, the German Air Force would treat you as an airman if you were a sergeant. But if you were a corporal, you'd go to prison.
If you want to learn more about Jack or other Iowa veterans, you can always stop out at the Gold Star Museum and you can literally step in a simulated B-17. We're going to continue to honor our heroes as you're watching a very special Veterans Day here on CWI 23 and Local 5. We'll be right back. It is my honor to introduce you to a Vietnam veteran who entered the war at just 19 years old, whose job was to process the bodies of our fallen heroes and prepare them for their final respects. Here is Roger Davidson.
We were the 506 Supply and Service Company Direct Support Memorial Activities. I think my job, looking back, was probably the most important job of all the military. I mean, you take a loved one that's been killed, so it can be viewed at home. Tonsanute was their base, but it was just a little makeshift building off to the side. Looked like it might have been the size of an airplane hangar. It held like 250 bodies. Everybody went through there that was killed in Vietnam. For the 2 weeks I was there for training, we done 440. That I've seen all the death I can take. And we had, I think there was 4 or 5 tables that we put them on. Open up the bag, cut the clothes off, then take a skeletal chart and fill it out where, you know, where they were hit, where it's missing. We'd shave them and give them a bath with a hose and that, take them back into the mortations, and then we would help them there when they would embalm. They would embalm them right there. We did our best to be viewed. I mean, they weren't sent home in a body bag. That, you know, that to me is so disrespectful. They were sent home in a transfer case. They were clean. They were, you know. we'd get Foot Lockers in. And I had a hard time with Foot Lockers. And we had to go through everything. I'd read everything. And I thought, my God, you know, just young, my age. You know, I feel like I knew them. You see their letters, and you go down, you work 15, 16 hours a day. You come back, you get something to eat, and you go to bed, and you wake up and think, how many more?
To learn more about Iowa Vietnam veterans, we encourage you to stop by the Gold Star Museum and check out this exhibit. Or to hear more about this particular story, we encourage you to check out the Iowa Veterans Perspective YouTube channel. Let's hear another incredible story right now. Here's Lou.
Now we're going to meet Robert Gates, Korean War veteran, United States Marine Corps from right here in Des Moines. Now, the Korean War helped shape a generation of Americans in the early 1950s. A lot of us think of the bubble helicopters or maybe even the TV show MASH. But the Cold War was in full swing, and once again, Iowans stepped up. But this time, they were being sent to a place that a lot of them, until the war, had never even heard of.
Robert L. Gates, and I was born 5/23 of 1931 in Des Moines, Iowa. I joined the Marine Corps as soon as we graduated from high school. I had just turned 18 in May and joined the Marine Corps along with 4 of my buddies, July 1st of 1949. I didn't even know where Korea was. I'd have to look at a world map back then, but I soon found out where it was at. Well, you have seasons kind of like Iowa, but the winters are absolutely brutal. Besides being a mountainous country, North Korea attaches Russia, and that's Siberia, Russia, and so in the winter you get Siberian winds down the peninsula. The Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. The division had over 6,000 casualties, but most of the casualties were not combat wounds, they were from weather-related wounds, mostly frozen feet. I served in 5 combat campaigns, and combat campaigns are combat chaos is the best way I can describe it. You are constantly without sleep. In the winter months, you're constantly cold. The worst battle stands out in my mind, which happened in September of '51, when I lost Dave Osuna, my pup tent buddy. And it was up in the mountainous type, so we had to go uphill. It was well defended by the North Koreans, but you know, there were probably 180, 190 of us. We finally took this position after 2 days. There were only 30 of us left. The rest were killed or wounded. And that was some of the hardest fighting during the war. I don't think there's been enough information out there on the Korean War. We're called the Forgotten War because it happened between World War II and Vietnam. And I think most people think it was not a bad war. In other words, we didn't have a lot of casualties. Well, we did. Over 54,000 Americans died in the Korean War. We still have over 8,000 MIAs, missing in action. There were 900,000 Chinese killed, 500,000 North Koreans killed. The South Koreans had a lot of casualties. There were a lot of civilian casualties, both in North Korea and South Korea. It lasted 3 years and 1 month, and it got forgotten, and it still is.
Now, the Gold Star Military Museum just completed this Korean War exhibit, so if you haven't been out here lately, you really might want to come pay it a visit. Now, don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with more amazing stories about Iowa veterans as we continue to honor our heroes on CW Iowa 23 and Local 5.